That's down 20% in 2 years. President Barack Obama does believe in it, and he's again trying to get Americans to see it as an economic issue.
There are those who will suggest that moving toward clean energy will destroy our economy, when it's the system we currently have that endangers our prosperity and prevents us from creating millions of new jobs.
He's fighting a well-financed opposition that is blanketing the airwaves, saying the exact opposite.
We'll lose more jobs, pay more for gas and electricity.
The Senate is poised to take up a bill next week that would regulate greenhouse gases. The plan calls for emissions from power plants, factories, and cars, using the levels from 2005, to be cut by 17% by 2020 and 83% by 2050. To get there, Obama wants to create a cap-and-trade system, which allows companies to buy and sell permits to pollute. Industry officials are pushing back hard. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, energy lobbyists have spent more than $218 million so far this year, compared to the environmental movement, which has spent just under $11 million.
This is lobbying of Congress as well as agencies in the White House. But surely the real figure is probably 3 to 10 times greater than that.
Oil, alternative.
Even more money is being spent on ads and on rallies like this one. The video posted on Energy Citizen's website.
And listen to the mass amounts of people that are out here, that live in places like Nashville and real places, and listen to real people. And we're saying, no, we don't want this bill to pass.
But there are questions about just how real these rallies are. A leaked memo from the American Petroleum Institute says it will pay to bus workers to the rallies. The goal, it says, quote, to provide significant attendance is essential to achieving the participation level that senators cannot ignore. The American Petroleum Institute says it hung signs announcing they sponsored the rallies, but most Americans aren't listening to either side. Surveys suggest few people know about the climate change legislation. President Obama is going to keep trying to change that. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
I'm now joined by Li Fong. He's a researcher at the Center for American Progress, a think tank here in Washington. He also writes for the center's blog, thinkprogress.org. Only 57% of Americans believe in the theory of global warming. Why this 20% drop in only 2 years?
It's an unfortunate poll, but it doesn't reflect the scientific community, which is still 100% behind climate change and the need for action now. And I think it more reflects the massive power of the coal and oil industry in corrupting this debate with lies and deception.
But why have the so-called AstroTurf efforts of these lobbyists and these essentially interest groups that have been organizing rallies across the country in order to discredit the theory of global warming, why have they gained so much traction?
They have so much money. They're paying for it. Hundreds of lobbyists. They have back-to-back television ads, radio ads. They're paying for dozens of think tanks to produce phony reports knocking climate change. It's all junk science that they're producing.
How are they doing it at these rallies? And I know you've been to a few of them.
Well, they bus in oil employees, and they're heavily controlled. They don't even let people bring in their own homemade signs. So it's completely manufactured. That's why it's called AstroTurf. It's fake grassroots.
But people are buying it, though. They're turning up.
Well, it's a bad economy, so, people are jittery, and they're sometimes afraid of change. And then when oil companies come in and deceive the public, they see an opening. I mean, these political operatives who are doing this, these are the same people who worked for the tobacco industry in the 90s saying smoking is good for you.
All right, but I mean, oil and energy companies pumping money into these lobbying groups in order to influence the debate. We'll say, why shouldn't lobbyists use their influence just the way they do on other issues like healthcare?
Sure, and I think, business can play a role, and obviously they should, but if they use lies and fear, that's not okay, and they're corrupting the debate with money.
And is this becoming, or in danger of becoming, as vitriolic and as violent in tone as we have seen at those rallies?
Oh, absolutely.
With the healthcare debate.
Some of the rallies, like one of them last month, they were holding signs that said, Obama's Hitler, Obama is a fascist, Obama's Mao, and this was sponsored by oil companies, sponsored by coal companies.
So they've got the money, they've got the influence. What can the Obama administration do to counter this influence?
They've got to counter it with the facts, and they've got to be hard-hitting. I think Obama was on point today. He addressed his critics, and he looked to the future.
And the interesting thing is not all the money goes into lobbying firms, but it also goes to think tanks that produce then reports to shore up the skepticism of global warming. But it also goes directly to political candidates and political action groups.
That's right, and it's funneling to Democrats and Republicans right now, so that's a big problem. They're hiring lobbyists from both sides of the aisle just so they can buy the entire system.
Li Fong, researcher at the Center for American Progress.
Thank you for having me.
Al Jazeera's Latin America editor Lucia Newman went to the island and sent us this report. Well, let's go back to the beginning of this, and we have a report here from Lucia Newman, who is Al Jazeera's Latin America editor. She went to Easter Island. This is her report.
When the first Polynesian kings arrived on this tiny island, they named it Tepito Tehenua, or the navel of the world. Perhaps because it's the world's most isolated place. Today, Easter Island is still a tiny dot on the map, 3,700 kilometers west of mainland Chile, to which the island belongs. Yet, the king's descendants aren't so isolated anymore. Thousands of outsiders come here every year, most of them tourists eager to observe the culture.